My name's Sandra O'Connor.
Recording in progress.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sandra O'Connor, and I would like to welcome you to the Greensboro Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Please note that this meeting is being conducted in person and online. If anyone participating online needs help with the Zoom during the meeting, please email Luke Carter at lucas, LUCAS.Carter, CARTER, at greensboro-nc.gov. Members of the Commission are appointed by the City Council and serve without pay. The Commission reviews all original zoning and rezoning requests for the City of Greensboro. Each Commissioner normally visits each site prior to the meeting. The procedure used at all public hearings is as follows. Planning staff presents background information and makes a recommendation. The applicant will present a short summary on how he or she communicated with the neighborhood and why the request is reasonable. Other persons in favor of the request speak. 10 minutes total is shared with the applicant. And then speakers opposed to the request also share a total of 10 minutes of speaking time. Those in favor of the request will share 5 minutes of rebuttal. Those in opposition to the request will share 5 minutes of rebuttal time. Any commission member may ask questions once a presenter has completed their presentation. All commissioners are required to vote unless they have a conflict of interest. In an effort to run meetings more efficiently, the Planning and Zoning Commission may reorganize the meeting agenda. Cases in which no opposition has been expressed to the Planning Department and in which Commission members do not feel necessitate in-depth discussion will be moved to the top of the agenda. Staff then will provide a shortened presentation for these expedited cases, and applicants have up to 2 minutes to address the Commission if they desire to provide any additional information they want the Commission to know. Expedited cases will then follow the procedures outlined previously. All denied cases and all approved ordinances receiving 6 or more favorable votes will constitute final action unless an appeal is submitted in writing to the Planning Department and the appeal fee is paid within 10 days. All ordinances receiving a majority of favorable votes but less than 6 will be subject to a public hearing by the City Council. When the case is called that you are interested in, people wishing to speak online will need to use the raise hand function, and you will be called upon to speak in the order in which hands were raised. Please find the raise hand function under the reaction button. People wishing to speak in person will need to come to the podium. When you are called upon to speak, please state your name and address for the record. Please also direct all comments and questions to the Zoning Commission. Participants in the Zoom meeting will be able to view the meeting and speak when they are called upon. This meeting is being recorded and televised on Greensboro Television Network. In addition, the telecast is being closed captioned for the hearing impaired. First of all, on our agenda is acknowledgement of absences, of which we have none, and approval of the minutes of the March 20th, 2023 regular meeting. Do I have a motion on that?
I would move we approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Engel and Ms. Magid. We have a motion to approve the March 2023 minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And do we have any withdrawals or continuances?
No, we have no requests for withdrawals or continuances this evening.
Okay. Before we go further, I'd like to give the commissioners an opportunity to introduce themselves, starting at my far right.
Keith Peterson.
Andrew Egbert.
Catherine Magid.
Richard T. Bryson. Vernal Alford.
Zach Engel.
Mary Skanes. Erica Glass.
Thank you. And do we have some comments from our attorney, please?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Chair O'Connor, and good evening, everyone. I'd like to remind everyone in attendance that when considering rezoning applications, the Planning and Zoning Commission makes determinations based on the land uses that are allowed under the proposed zoning district that's been put forth in the application, and where applicable, any proposed conditions that are also included with the application. Now, land use concerns can be wide-reaching. By way of example, it would include impacts on public infrastructure, such as traffic concerns, and these factors can be relevant when a new land use would be allowed by a rezoning. However, concerns that are not related to land use and the conditions of a rezoning application are not germane to the determinations made by this body. Now, such issues would include matters such as school impacts or generalized concerns about crime rates in an area. Those sorts of issues, other issues that are not germane to the discussions of the board, may be referred to the planning department or to the technical review committee as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kirkman, do we have any items that we can put on our accelerated agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have, we think 3 items. We'll need to clarify one of them, as we discussed earlier. The first item is Z-23-04002 for a portion of 909 North Church Street. There is no one signed up in opposition for that request. The next one is Z-23-04-003 for 8309 West Market Street. That one we'll need to clarify a speaker online. And then Z-23-04-005, which is 5402 and 5410 Hornaday Road. We have no one signed up in opposition for that case.
Thank you. I understand we have a Zoom attendee, Ms. Johnson. Did you wish to speak in opposition of West Market Street?
Yes.
Okay. Then we will move for our accelerated agenda items Z-23-04002, 909 North Church Street, and Z-23-04005, 5402 and 5410 Hornaday Road. Unless someone else wants to speak in opposition to either of these items, last chance. Okay, if not, then we'll proceed with first North Church Street and then Hornaday Road. The first item then is Z-23-04002, a rezoning request from R5 Residential Single Family 5 to RS7 Residential Single Family 7 for the property identified as a portion of 909 North Church Street, generally described as east of North Church Street and north of East Bessemer Avenue, 0.11 acres. Mr. Kirkman?
Yes, thank you, Chair O'Connor. Again, the request is for approximately 0.11 acres, a rezoning from R5 residential single family to R7 residential single family. North of this request is currently zoned a combination of R5 residential single family and CM commercial medium. East of the subject property is zoned CDCM, conditional district commercial medium. South of the subject property is zoned R5 single family residential, and west of the subject property is zoned O office. The subject property currently contains a single family dwelling. North of the request are a single family dwelling as well as a vacant commercial building. East of the request are retail sales. South of the request are single family dwellings, and west of the request contains a dental office. Staff has evaluated this request and determined it is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan and the policies contained therein, and we are recommending approval of the request. I can answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Mr.
Yes,
Walker?
Madam Chair. I was trying to figure out what the advantage is to go from R5 to R7, looking at the comparison between the two zonings and looking at how small this parcel is at 0.11. Is there any advantage to going to R7?
Yes, so the minimum lot size in R7 is 5,000 square feet, whereas the minimum lot size in R5 is 7,000 square feet. And they are looking to do a subdivision of the property to exchange some property with an adjacent owner, and in order to make sure that the lot's still legal for the existing single family. That's why the zoning is being requested.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Okay. I see Mr. Mayshark on the list. Did you want to add any comments to this in favor? You have up to 2 minutes. If you would care to speak, you need to come to the podium, please. Please give your name and address.
Hi, I'm Stephen Edmondson. I live at 908 Cherry Street. I'm the adjacent landowner trying to purchase the land, so we basically got stuck by the city that couldn't let the transfer go through because his remaining lot would be lower than the R5 requirement of 7,000 square feet. So with the rezoning, we can go through with I'm buying a portion of the land that he doesn't really occupy. It's just empty land.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions? If not, unless I see an objection, we'll close the public hearing. Then do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Engel.
In regards to agenda item Z-23-04-002, the Greensboro Planning and Zoning Commission believes its action to recommend approval of the rezoning request for a portion of 909 North Church Street from R5 Residential Single Family 5 to R7 Residential Single Family 7 to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable in the public interest for the following reasons. 1, the request is consistent with the Comprehensive Plan's future built form map and future land use map. 2, the proposed R7 zoning district permits uses which fit the context of the surrounding area and limits negative impacts on the adjacent properties. 3, the request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Second, Mary Skanes.
Thank you, Ms. Skeens. We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions? If not, we'll take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That's unanimous. And that constitutes, this approval is final action unless an appeal is submitted in writing to the Planning Department and the appeal fee paid in 10 days. Anyone may file such an appeal. All such appeals will be subject to a public hearing at the Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 City Council meeting. All adjoining property owners will be notified of any such appeal. Thank you. The next item on our accelerated agenda is Z-23-04-005. This is a rezoning from CDCH, Conditional District Commercial High, to CDCM, Conditional District Commercial Medium, for the properties.
Sorry, I'm trying to get this to share for
okay.
the online audience.
For the properties identified as 5402 and 5410 Hornaday Road, generally described as north of Hornaday Road, south of I-40, and east of Guilford College Road, 10.35 acres. Mr. Kirkman?
Yes, thank you. Again, the request is to rezone from Conditional District Commercial High to Conditional District Commercial Medium. North of the subject property is currently Zone CM, Commercial Medium. East request is Zone CDCH, Conditional District Commercial High, as well as CDCM, Conditional District Commercial Medium. South of the request is currently Zone CDCM, and west request is Zoned R3 Residential Single Family. The subject property is currently used for retail sales. The larger building in this picture is currently vacant at this time. North of the request is Interstate 40. East request is also retail sales with automobile sales further to the east. South of the request is a shopping center, and west of the request is a religious assembly use. Staff has evaluated this request and feels that it does meet the policies of the adopted comprehensive plan, and we are recommending in favor of the request. I can answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Mr. Kirkman. Would the applicant like to make up to 2 minutes comment? Mr. Fox?
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Mike Fox. My address is 400 Belmead Street, Suite 800. Happy to answer any questions. This is a infill project, a reuse of the old building that was formerly Macy's. It would be a Be Safe, safe storage, and car caves. Surprisingly, in commercial high, you cannot do self-storage, but you can in commercial medium. So,
thank you. Are there any questions? Unless I see an objection, then we will close the public hearing.
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Magid.
Item Z-23-04-005. The Greensboro Planning and Zoning Commission believes that its actions to recommend approval of the rezoning request for the property at 5402 and 5410 Hornaday Road from CDCH, Conditional District Commercial High, to CDCM, Conditional District Commercial Medium, to be consistent with the adopted Greensboro 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the Comprehensive Plan's future build format and future land use map. The proposed CDCM zoning district, as conditioned, permits uses which fits the context of the surrounding area and limits negative impacts on the adjacent properties. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? That is unanimous. This approval constitutes final action unless an appeal is submitted in writing to the Planning Department and the appeal fee is paid within 10 days. Anyone may file such an appeal. All such appeals will be subject to a public hearing at the Tuesday, May 16, 2023 City Council meeting. All adjoining property owners will be notified of any such appeal. Thank you. We will now return to our originally posted agenda. And the first item on that is old business. It is Z-23-01005, a rezoning request from RM12 Residential Multifamily 12 to CDRM 18, Conditional District Residential Single Family 18, for the property identified as 1921A New Garden Road, generally described as northwest of New Garden Road and east of Brassfield Road, 28.10 acres. Mr. Kirkman?
Yes, and first I must apologize for the typo. It's actually residential multifamily 18.
Thank you.
So again, the request is to rezone from RM12 residential multifamily to CDRM 18 conditional district residential multifamily. North of this request is currently zoned office. East of request is zoned CDCM, conditional district commercial medium, and CDCH, conditional district commercial high. South and west of the request is currently zoned R3 residential single family. The subject property currently contains multifamily dwellings. North of the request is an office park. East of the request is a religious assembly use as well as a shopping center. And south and west of the request are single family dwellings. This is an image showing the subject property as seen from Brassfield Road. And this image shows the subject property as seen from New Garden Road. This is a daycare use that's located north of request, zoned office. This is a medical office use, also located north of request and zoned office. And this is another office use, also located north of request, zoned office. This is undeveloped land located northeast of request along Richfield Road, zoned CDCH. This is the religious assembly use located east of request, zoned CDCM. This is a shopping center located east of request, zoned CDCM. This is undeveloped land located southeast of request along Rock Glen Lane, zoned R3. This is a single family dwelling located southeast of request, zoned R3. This is a single family dwelling also located south of request on Westmont Court, again zoned R3. This is a single family dwelling located west of request on Brassfield Oaks Drive, zoned R3. This is another single family dwelling also located west of request on Brassfield Oaks Court, zoned R3. This is another single family dwelling located west of request on Normandy Hills Circle, again zoned R3. This is vacant land located west of the request on Brassfield Road, zoned R3. This is a view facing northwest on Brassfield Road. The subject property here is on your right. This is a view facing southeast on Brassfield Road. The subject property here is on your left. It's a view facing northeast on New Garden Road. The subject property here is on your left. And this is southwest on New Garden Road. The subject property here is on your right. There was one condition originally submitted with this application. However, the applicant wishes to add additional conditions this evening, so I'm going to read those items into the record for the commission to vote on. The first one is that the applicant wishes to reduce the number of permitted dwelling units from 475 to 460. Add a new condition number 2, building height shall be limited to 50 feet. And a new condition number 3, a 10-foot wide street yard shall be installed along the Brassfield Road right-of-way adjacent to any new development on the site in accordance with ordinance requirements. Existing vegetation along the Brassfield right-of-way adjacent to the existing development will be supplemented as needed to bring it into compliance with these minimum ordinance requirements. To the extent possible, the property owner will provide additional evergreen plantings above the minimum required by the ordinance for year-round screening. So the commission will need to accept those conditions.
Do I have a motion
vote
to
to.
accept the proposed conditions?
I would move we accept the conditions.
Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner
Engel.
Bryson, second.
And thank you, Mr. Bryson. We have a motion and a second to approve these additional conditions. Is there any comment or question? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? No. So the conditions are accepted.
The GSO 2040 comprehensive plan designates the site as urban general and along an urban mixed-use corridor and district-scaled activity center on the future built form map, and the future land use map, as reflected in the New Garden Road strategic plan, designates the subject property as moderate residential. If this request is approved tonight, the plan would be amended to the high residential classification. The proposed rezoning request supports the comprehensive plan's Creating Great Places goal to create a citywide network of unique neighborhoods, offering residents of all walks of life a variety of quality housing choices, and the filling in our framework goal to arrange our land uses where we can live, work, attend school, shop, and enjoy our free time to create a more vibrant and livable Greensboro. Proposed CDRM 18 as condition allows uses that are compatible with existing uses in the surrounding area, and staff is recommending approval of the request. I can answer any questions.
Could you elaborate, Mr. Kirkman, please, about when we finally take a vote on this after we have our public hearing, we will be making a recommendation rather than a final action. Could you explain how that plays with the comprehensive
Yes,
plan?
as information we provide to the commission earlier, the enabling legislation at the state level, which is referred to usually as 160D, that's the reference, talks about rezoning cases when a zoning change is made and there's a conflict with the adopted comprehensive plan. The effect of the rezoning is to effectively amend that plan so that it is consistent with that rezoning action. We did get additional clarification from the school government that standard applies not only to the broader citywide comprehensive plan, but also to small area neighborhood plans as well, as they are components of the comprehensive plan. The authority to make that final action, however, appears to lie with the governing body, which is the city council on there. So effectively what the commission will be asked to do this evening is to make a recommendation on the rezoning. And if the rezoning is approved, it will have the effect of amending the New Garden Road strategic plan.
So we won't be discussing the comprehensive plan as part of this hearing this evening.
Well, you'll certainly talk about the plan policies as part of your discussion about that. Anytime we have a zoning change and we have a plan, we need to look to that plan to see what information it talks about. But you will not take a separate vote on amending the plan. It will only be on the rezoning itself.
All right. Are there any questions from commissioners on that? Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome.
Kirkman. Ms. Magid?
Yeah, and that only applies to this case, or does it apply to all cases that it will be?
The statutory authority is to all cases. I mean, we have, the 10 questions, the other things we use for consideration every time we talk about a rezoning, but we got clarification that it's the same relationship with a small area neighborhood plan as with the larger comprehensive plan. But because there is an adopted plan specific to this area, city council must take that action. You still have the authority to take final action on the other zoning cases.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, we have up to 10 minutes for the applicant or those speaking in favor.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. It's Mark Isaacson, 804 Green Valley Road here in Greensboro. I'm here this evening on behalf of the owner of the Brassfield Apartments. And with me this evening online is our engineer on the project, Ashton Smith, with the firm of Kimley Horn in Raleigh. So he's available to answer or address questions the commission may have about civil engineering matters. The applicant acquired this property in May of 2020, and since then there's been a high growth rate of population in the city in general, and specifically an interest in housing in this area. And the applicant recognized the opportunity with their engineer to build additional apartment units in this community to provide high-quality housing options as the demand for housing in this area has been growing. So the proposed rezoning request would permit what we consider to be a true infill development with proposed additional multifamily units to be constructed on campus. That is, no additional property would be acquired in order to allow the construction of these additional units. Mr. Kirkman read into the record our conditions, and the commission has approved those, and we appreciate that. We have worked closely with some stakeholders in the area in order to arrive at those revised conditions, and I'll get into those in a few minutes. The conditions, as you heard, would limit the number of units even further below what was permitted in RM18, and also limit the building height, and would require the installation of enhanced landscaping along Brassfield Road. Let's see here. We'll get to our next. Okay. So this slide is intended to give you a bit of a larger perspective about the zoning pattern in this area. The property to the lower left in gray is the subject property, the Brassfield Apartments. And you'll see as we walk through the area going north, there's just a mix of uses here. Office uses, commercial, heavy and medium, and then also RM18 uses to the north as we work our way toward Battleground. So we have essentially a bit of a circle area that has a collection of these mix of uses. And this is, I would suggest, exactly what the New Garden Corridor Plan intended to accomplish when it was first adopted by the City Council. So here we have, within walkable distance of this property, stores and retail such as Home Depot, several restaurants, there are offices right across New Garden Road, all within easy walking or bikeable distances. And as I mentioned, there's sort of a mirror of the pattern here of the RM18 at the northern end of Brassfield Road. One of the concerns that we heard about in our process, and by the way, we do appreciate the additional time the Commission gave us at the February meeting to allow us to have further discussions and to create these conditions. But you'll see up at the top left the dashed line, and that shows you the elevation or the area that is highlighted at the bottom right. Our engineer produced this, and we had heard that there may be a concern about the height of the buildings in this area, which is, I guess I would call it topographically challenged, let's say. And so we discussed that at length this morning with Ashton Smith, who's on the line, and he produced this elevation profile. And so what you'll see here is at the lower right of this slide is the area for Brassfield Road, and then as it goes up and to the east, you'll see the existing grade where the existing apartment building is located. So the engineers will create what's called a proposed finished grade, which will be level, of course, on which to build an apartment building. And this will be located a certain distance back from Brassfield Road. But I think the important point to note here, and what we're trying to illustrate, is that the proposed buildings will be lower in grade than the existing buildings. And so the concept is to try to achieve an appearance along Brassfield Road that blends in well. So with the lower grade of this proposed building and the enhanced landscaping, which we'll get to in a moment, we think it will make a good combination for the appearance along Brassfield Road, which we all think is just excellent and needs to be preserved. And here are a few photographs you've seen that, at the risk of duplicating some of the things that Mike showed you. The entrance into Brassfield apartment homes, the landscaping along Brassfield Road, and just trying to illustrate the point that we're making about how we want to preserve this enhanced landscaping. And so one point to note here is that when we get to this landscaping plan, several of these trees were removed a couple of years ago by Duke Power, now Duke Energy, because of these low-hanging power lines. And they have an easement here, recorded easement, which allows them to do that. And so those trees were removed, and per this condition, they will not only be replaced, but they will be enhanced significantly in accordance with the landscaping plan, which we'll get to in a moment. But I just wanted to show, for the Commission's benefit, the low-hanging power lines. And we understood from Duke Energy that the concern here was several power outages that had been occurring in this area. And in addition, the new hospital that was built on Battleground at Drawbridge is serviced by these lines. And so Duke Energy obviously had a significant concern about power, the interference with the power being transmitted by these lines. So we have, let me move on then. This is the landscaping plan that we have had prepared by our engineering landscaping firm for illustrative purposes. It shows the existing landscaping in place. It also shows in darker green the new landscaping that's proposed to be added. I would note for the Commission, this has been approved by Duke Energy already, so we have worked with Duke, and they have approved this plan and the materials that we have proposed, which they and we believe will not interfere with those power lines. In addition, we worked with the Brassfield Oaks Homeowners Association across the street, and they had a specific concern about one type of planting material. And so we agreed to replace what was shown in the plan with what you see here, the hollies that I believe will, at maturity, grow in very nicely and provide an evergreen screen that the condition calls for. Next is a copy of the letter that we sent out in December to neighbors in the area per the city's notification list. We did have a neighborhood meeting on Thursday, January 5. I think about 14 or 15 folks attended the meeting. The primary concern that we heard was about landscaping, and I believe we have addressed that with the new condition that we've offered. So in summary, I believe that this, and submit that our proposal is in accordance with the city's comprehensive land use plan. The existing access points are suitable to handle any increased traffic. There was no traffic impact study required in connection with this request. We would submit that this proposed use will not negatively impact the use of adjoining parcels, and the vast majority of the property is already developed for this exact use. And the expansion here that's proposed is a textbook example of a suitable infill development. We believe this shows balanced growth, that the proposed rezoning is in response to a high market demand for this product in this area. The volume of activity in this area has certainly increased, and we believe the owner is responding to that demand. I would submit that this is truly a classic infill project and meets the goal in our 2040 plan of filling in our framework, which speaks about creating walkable, compact, mixed-use activity centers where people live, work, and enjoy life. It actually encourages higher density developments with access to those goods and services.
Wow, could not be more perfect. Thank you, Mr. Isaacson.
For once, my timing might be all right.
I have a question.
So thank you all very much, and
I believe we have a question.
I have a question. So there are 18 buildings that exist on the property now, 18, and we're talking about the addition of 4?
4 buildings, correct.
4 buildings.
What's proposed, that's right.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
The landscape buffer currently in existence today, is it on average 10 feet wide, or is it?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
The existing buffer?
Yes.
A streetscape?
Yes.
I don't believe we've measured it, but it obviously will be under the new condition.
Well, yeah, I probably shouldn't say. I'll have to look maybe back at some of my pictures. It's wider in some areas, it looked like, and I'm sort of trying to picture in my mind what it's going to look like in the area you're building on.
Right. Well,
So-
I think we're talking about a minimum of 10 feet.
Okay.
So it'll be subject to the engineer's site plan to be reviewed by TRC, Duke Energy, and we also have another association, private association in the area called the Brassfield Association, which by deed restriction requires their approval. But I've spoken with them, and they don't anticipate any issue with the plan that we've submitted.
Ms. Gaines?
Is it safe to say or correct to say they have been removing an awful lot of the landscaping that had died, in addition to the trees?
Correct.
Especially the understory cedars. So, piggybacking on Mr. Engel's question, I think what is currently there is not beginning to be what it was in the early stages of development.
Right, that's correct.
But you're going to put it back to the
right.
10 feet with,
Right.
with
If-
screening.
If nothing happened, if this rezoning application had not occurred, I believe that would have just remained as it is. But
Ugly,
the
okay.
application here triggers the restoration, let's say, of the older landscaping that was removed and the installation of enhanced or additional landscaping that's required by the zoning conditions. So 2 prongs on this: the restoration of the removed landscaping and the addition of enhanced landscaping, all subject to approval by Duke Energy, the City of Greensboro, and the Brassfield Association.
And this drawing was very helpful as to the proposed elevations for the new building. So they're actually going to be reducing that grade in the back, getting a flat pad for the buildings.
That's right.
And then I know there's been some discussions about stormwater and runoff, which we have absolutely nothing to say about because that's a technical review committee then will dictate the drainage that needs to be done in order to suit those requirements.
I believe that's correct. In addition, there's some private agreements between property owners in the area that govern the stormwater runoff. And our engineer's on the line and certainly be able to address specific questions about that kind of thing if you're...
Well, I don't want to get into the weeds when stormwater and that sort of thing is not something that, we're not engineers. We don't consider that. So all we can deal with is the additional 4 buildings that are going to be put on what is going to be a reduced elevation property. So if I heard you correctly, they're not going to be as high as the buildings that are there.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one more question.
Yes, Ms. Maggott.
After looking at the property there, Brassfield Oaks has at their entrance a house on each side, and Normandy Hills has a house on each side. The house closest to this property, Normandy Hills, has a 8-foot-high mound of dirt with trees growing on top. So those 4 homes would be the closest ones that would be affected by this.
I think that's correct. That's the way I see it as well.
Okay, thank you.
And
Any other questions?
Well, I believe you'll hear from the president of the HOA of Brassfield Oaks later on.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Isaacson. All right, then we have up to 10 minutes combined for anyone who wants to speak in opposition. I have registered Mr. Jordan, Mr. Willis, Mr. Jordan, Ms. Bowden, and Ms. Geenan registered to speak in opposition. So as you can come to the podium and introduce yourself with your name and address, please.
I am Hugh Willis. I live at 1906 New Garden Road. That's just the first block south of the Brassfield New Garden intersection. I realize the city has a housing shortage, and although I understand the need for additional housing in Greensboro, this request does not adhere to the very expensive and very carefully considered and evaluated strategic plan that the city spent a year and a half on, and many, many thousands of dollars and over 1,000 hours of staff time and citizen time in developing. It's not your run-of-the-mill plan that went into the area. The conditions as the owner has prescribed them are insufficient to preserve the character of the surrounding neighborhoods, which is contrary to the goal of both Greensboro 2040 and the New Garden Strategic Plan. You know, apartments come in all sizes and shapes, and in the suburbs, garden-style apartments like Brassfield are, and townhome communities, if done appropriately, tastefully, if done right, they can blend seamlessly into the surrounding single-family neighborhoods. Typical LDO zones are RM5, 8, and 12, which is why the strategic plan for this area is limited to RM12. RM18 is sometimes used in such areas, although its 80-foot height limit is more like the mid-rise 5 to 7 stories where it would be more typically encountered. And I understand in this case, using the existing construction type, which was already RM12, the condition to stay with that same type in this new area is not really a huge concession. It's just to say, yeah, we want to keep doing what we already had before. But it will be at a somewhat higher density because the area in question is about 3 3/4 acres for 4 units versus 18 units on 24 acres, the balance for 24 1/4 acres, the balance of the property. Let's see. Most of this area, to speak on a point that was made by Mr. Isaacson, most of this area was developed by the Weaver Corporation, including the Brassfield Shopping Center down along Battleground Avenue, the Home Depot, the office complex to the north of this property and this property itself, and 3 of the 5 or 6 residential single-family neighborhoods on the immediate opposite side of the street. So that commercial development that's happening along Battleground has less to do with the New Garden Strategic Plan and more to do with the Weaver Corporation's foresight in establishing those centers of business activity. Now, understanding that his apartment complex on the top of the terrain here is very steep slope down towards Home Depot, very steep slope down towards the south fork of the grassy creek, with some little fingers of land that were developable. And so, but in developing those, knowing he was going to be developing those as single family, and others, Brown and Jarrett, were also developing over there on just the opposite side of the road. When he did sell the property to the developer that built the apartment complex, he wanted to make sure that the property would be compatible and would make that seamless transition and would serve as a buffer against the commercial on the opposite side of the hill, but would present a very excellent face seamlessly to the residential. And so he included in his deed this clause that the grantee understands and agrees with the past, present, and future development of Brassfield, of which the property is part, is and should be of the highest quality. Particular attention will be paid by grantor to assure the screening of parking areas and improvements, i.e. buildings, within the property from the view of those persons using New Garden Road and as well as property owners across from Bassfield Road from the property. And what he's saying about the grantor reserved the right to review any changes made or in the original development of the property and in its subsequent development carrying forward for past, present, and future. And in fact, it was supposed to be going with the land. So the decision of the new owner after 25 years of everybody before him, all the previous owners trimming those trees when they got excessively high, which is what Duke would have done if it had been up to them. His decision to save money and cut them down to the ground, scalping the berm off entirely, was not consistent with the obligation he had, and so his restoration now is just repairing damage that he should not have inflicted on the neighborhood to begin with. But anyhow, I don't want to get too much into all that. The point is, this clause in the deed, and I think I've sent all of you a copy of the deed, clearly shows the intent of Brassfield Park Apartments to be fully compatible with the single-family homes in surrounding neighborhoods. And this new development that is being proposed today is not in character with the area. Now, it is true that the apartment complex, as a general thing, is on a hillside gently sloping upward from New Garden to its apex just south of the office park to its north. But there's a small area where this erosion was, where these deep ravines were, that was in the view of the builder. It was just more difficult to build on, and so he elected to not use this area in his northwest corner, less than a seventh of the total property, and instead put all his buildings on the flat top of the hill. And the road slopes down from the intersection at New Garden down to, they actually had to make a fill section when they put the road across these deep ravines here that caused the water problems for the neighbors on the Normandy hillside. And so, yes, the elevation of the terrace is maybe lower than the elevation elsewhere on the property, but it's also higher than the elevation of the road at the property. Now, I asked 2 months ago when I first heard about this, I asked Mr. Isaacson for an elevation drawing, and none was forthcoming. In talking with the engineer, I think it's clear to me that the owner has resisted producing an elevation drawing because they don't want us to see what this is going to look like. I'll do my best to explain it even without an elevation drawing. But the charge given to the engineer was to figure out the way to get the maximum number of units onto that hillside, and his solution was to terrace it off. Now, this is the view that we were all given. This is the engineer's sketch when he figured out that he could actually get 96 units in there by terracing off that entire hillside. But this is where the cut is. And you can see the cut and fill on this drawing. You can see the two buildings nearest the road are elevated far up above the road. It's essentially adding another story beneath the buildings themselves relative to the road. Now, if you look at the terrain, this is a horizontal that walks across the terrain. And the engineer's plan is the downhill side of that red ribbon will be all fill. The uphill side will be all cut. But this is a better alternative where I've put the buildings on the hill in relation to the existing terrain, basically the same way that Park Forest Apartments just around across from Home Depot was built in the beginning with minimal earth moving. And I found out that because you could use this area out that's horizontal out to the road, the parking lot would be in here, and it would be basically a horizontal exit out to the road. There would be no need to put a fire truck turnaround uphill of the buildings on the terrace. That pushed all the buildings closer to the road. But with that fire truck turnaround no longer needed, we can move the buildings back further from the road and in fact accomplish, as I show in this drawing, 100 foot from the curb. But the problem is, with the building sitting up on that fill section, the two ones closest to the road, a full story plus above the local road, not talking about the road up at the intersection, but in front of the property, in front of the construction, sitting up on essentially another whole story. They become 4-story buildings, in effect, looking at them, and close right on. So now's my time up. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
sir. Thank you.
I was going to make some recommendations, but I guess I'll.
We will have some rebuttal time available. Were there any questions? Thank you, Mr. Willis. All right, then, we have 5 minutes of rebuttal time for each side. So if anyone wants to speak in favor of the application, please come to the podium and identify yourself with your name and address.
Madam Chair and council members, good evening. My name is Ralph Thomas. I live at 3804 Brassville Oaks Court in Greensboro, basically across the street from this same development. I've been dealing with this for a number of years, a couple of years since they cut it down. I'm actually also the HOA president for Brassville Oaks subdivision. And so our group has diligently met offline and looked at all the berm plantings and looked through this for a long time. This is not something that we took lightly. And it wasn't something that, after giving a lot of forethought with considerations to the potential builder, that we said, let's talk about it. We actually sat down and talked about it and reviewed the information. And I gave them I applaud them for the consideration that they gave in doing so, because it means a lot. You want to get something and be good neighbors, good stewards, and that's what they did. That's the bottom line. And moving forward, we can do that effectively by changing the parameters of what we are dealing with. It's not about the height of the building so much. It's about the infrastructure that's going there now and the increase of buildings. You can do that, and you can still maintain a reasonable amount of corridor that we currently have. And I applaud what they've done with us, and I appreciate their efforts. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Just a question, real quick.
Yes.
I know you're here tonight. Are you here in a personal capacity? Are you here representing? And I just want to understand: is this support the neighborhood association? HOA?
This is support for the neighborhood association.
Okay. That's what I wanted, because your letter said personal support, and I wanted to make sure that it was actually the neighborhood support.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions for Mr. Thomas?
Thank you.
Okay, we have 3 minutes and 35 seconds remaining for anyone speaking in favor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be fairly brief. Just wanted to respond to a couple of points that were heard as far as the comprehensive plan, the New Garden corridor plan. I don't want to get into too much of the detail, just limited time, but I would just suggest that the Commission listen to your professional planning staff and their analysis of those plans and how this project meets the goals and objectives of those plans. And obviously, when the 2040 plan was adopted, it, by law, as you heard, updated the specific corridor plan. And so I would, if you have questions, specific questions about those plans, I would address those to your professional staff. Mr. Willis went over the deed restrictions and the intent that was evidenced in those restrictions from late 1990s when the Weaver companies conveyed this property to the then original builder. And I would just suggest to the Commission those are private restrictions or statements in a privately entered into deed that we're, as you I'm sure are aware, here to discuss this rezoning application. As I mentioned, the improvements to this property, specifically the landscaping plan, will be subject to the approval by the Brassfield Association, which the Weaver Companies manages to this day. So they were involved then, they're still involved. I have discussed this plan, submitted it to them. They obviously aren't going to take any action about it unless and until this rezoning is approved and final. I would just end by saying that this is going to council next month. We, as we have, will continue to work with all the stakeholders in this area. I would submit to the commission that perhaps the largest stakeholder is the existing property owner. I would suggest to the commission that it makes just logical sense that with a popular apartment home community, this owner will not do anything that will adversely affect the marketability, the livability of their existing property. And so I think they'll be very careful in the way that they approach this project should this be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 1 minute and 5 seconds remaining if anyone else wants to speak in favor. Thank you, Mr. Isaacson.
May I add a question?
Any question?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Isaacson. I have a question. The sheet that you have with your elevation profile, I'm older and I can't see these numbers, but when you show that profile at the bottom, what is the elevation of the proposed finished grade there?
I'm sorry, your question was what's the elevation of what?
In the bottom right-hand corner, you have that section through the grade.
The inset.
Yes. And I'm asking, what is the elevation of that proposed finished grade?
I might suggest that we get our engineer on the line to answer that question. I believe he's on the line. Luke, is he available?
Is the engineer on the line? Can he answer the question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, good evening,
If you
council
could
and
name
staff.
Address, please.
The finished grade elevation, is fairly
Mr. Smith, this is
preliminary.
Mr.
Excuse
Smith,
me,
this
could
is
you-
Luke Carter. Can you give your name and address for the record, please?
Yes. My name is Ashton Smith with Kimberly Horn. I live at 101 Chandler Springs in Hot Springs, North Carolina.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, the finished grade elevation that's shown in that profile view that Mark had put up was just a very quick, rough estimate, but it was in the ballpark of 835 to 840 would be my best guess at this time.
And then a follow-up question is, what is the crown of the Brassfield Road elevation?
It is around 830.
830?
Yes.
I think he said around 830.
Around 830.
Yes.
Another question for you.
Mr. Engel, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Smith, the buildable area that you're looking at for the 4 buildings, how many acres is that?
I think it's roughly in the 4 to 5 acre range if you just kind of take everything outside the setbacks and the buffer up front there.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for the engineer? Or from Mr. Isaacson? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Smith. We appreciate it. All right, we have
You're
up
welcome.
to 5 minutes remaining of rebuttal time, and we have some people in opposition from whom we haven't heard yet. So I would first recognize Richard Jordan. If you could turn your camera on, thank you. If you give your name and address, please.
Richard Jordan, 5503 Belvedere Place, 27410. I live in the Robin Ridge neighbourhood within the New Garden Strategic Plan. My comment's going to be about procedure for the New Garden Strategic Plan. As we heard earlier, it took 18 months to put together with the city planner that came from up north. We all spent many hours, obviously volunteer hours for us, to put in a plan to stop what we're seeing again tonight. If I refer to the plan, and it's all about procedure, page 26 of the New Garden Strategic Plan. The city will advertise and conduct a public meeting in or near the planning area in coordination with the applicant to review the proposed changes with residents. If an adjoining neighbourhood has a neighbourhood association that meets regularly, the city will ask for their input on the proposed plan amendments and rezoning, giving them up to 60 days to respond. Number one, the planning board will hold a public hearing, make recommendations on the proposed plan, zoning commission to hear it for a public hearing, and then city council. Now, that part of the plan, and Mr. Isaacson will say, well, we reached out to those neighbourhoods. Well, that part of the plan was what we already had. The amendment we want, and if you go to page 30 of the New Garden Strategic Plan, build stronger community relations among neighbourhoods and within community leadership, recommends through regular meetings of a formal New Garden Corridor Advisory Committee and neighbourhood associations, build with the community's capacity to work together towards shared goals and objectives, work with the city, Guildford College, West Friendly Avenue Alliance, and other partners that can support implementation of the adopted plan. And it goes on to talk about that. We have not reached out to me. My email's still the same. My telephone number's still the same. I put a lot of sweat into the plan. Nobody reached out to me on this. I'm suggesting that we adjourn this from tonight's meeting again, reach out to the people within the New Garden Plan, sit down with them, and let us be involved in it. We're doing exactly what we did before, just walking over us. It just feels as though now that we're now going to rezone one parcel at a time within the 2040 plan, or within the New Garden Strategic Plan, or the Friendly Avenue. I mean, I'm working with the Fleming Road plan. Am I wasting my time with that? I just want these procedures put in that we talked about when we put the plan together, because that was one of the big reasons, was the lack of reach out from the city. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. Ms. Bowden, if you'd give your name and address, if you wanted to turn on your camera, please.
Yes, good evening. I am attorney Jennifer Bowden. I live at 11 West Mount Court. My home backs up to New Garden Road. I was first put on notice of this rezoning in January. I immediately sent an email to Ms. McCook on January 5th expressing my opposition to this. Due to the traffic, this is a very dense area, high traffic, and it's extremely loud. When I'm outside my house, I couldn't even talk on the phone if I wanted to. And I have not heard from anybody regarding this. I was present at the last meeting. To my actual surprise, that's when I was found out that the applicant's attorneys were working with the HOA group. I did not know which one. Because no one has reached out to me. My neighborhood does not have an HOA, and I'm definitely not sad about it. But it does make things like this more difficult because we do not have, as a collective, a group to band together. So, but no one has reached out to me about this, about any of my concerns. And that's my biggest issue today. I'm actually happy to hear about what the plan is, because I didn't have any information on it, because again, no one has reached out to me. There was only a traffic engineer who did reach out to me, which that conversation to me was, I'd rather had not had it. But the strategic plan that I was not a part of, I moved here the year after that was done. All of the concerns of the stakeholders in that strategic plan are coming to fruition now. The speed, there are enough apartments, no need for big, massive complexes, there's too much traffic. And that is my concern, along with, again, not being reached out to. And I have to strongly disagree with Mr. Isaacson. The largest stakeholder in this situation is not the applicant. It is the residents that have been living here well before 2020, that want to preserve their quality of life and their properties by not having so much noise pollution, traffic, speeding, that we can't even go walk through our neighborhoods because we have cars speeding by us. So I just strongly disagree with this rezoning. And again, the largest stakeholders are the people that have been living here for years. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gainan, if you have anything to say, you have 7 seconds if you'd like to speak. you could.
Yes, I would. I'm Diane Guinan. I'm at 5607 Robin Ridge Road. And I'd just like to say I was on the New Garden Strategic Plan. I agree with all that Richard said, and I'd like to say that I think this is a red flag to all residents in Greensboro. We're no longer following a city plan or the corridor plans. We're making determinations one parcel at a time.
I'm sorry,
And so,
the time is up. I'm so sorry. Thank you very much. That concludes the time that we have available for both sides. Are there any questions or comments?
I had a question about the Westmount Drive woman who spoke. Thank you for speaking. Looking on the map, I don't see how you would get out of your development. When you come out of your development, do you go over Rock Glen and then get on Brassfield to get out of it?
Yeah, so there are two, well, there's probably three exits, but the one closest to my house is the intersection of Brassfield and New Garden Road, where this apartment complex is right there at that intersection. In the presentation, there were actually two homes that were photographed that are right, one's 2 doors down from me and the other one is on the other side of Brassfield Road. But yes, you would go right there at the intersection. I would take Westmount Court to Westmount Drive to Rock Glen, and then Brassfield and New Garden is the intersection right there.
I got you. And on our material, you're not located in the circle of Spear around the development that's in question, but I understand your concern. Thank you.
I got the notice that I was in the 750-foot radius. That's how I got the notice about the rezone.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think the confusion is that the road just trails off the map just slightly there.
Yeah. So I didn't know if there was another exit out besides Brassfield Road. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions? Ms. Gaines? No?
Just to comment, and Mr. Buchon, if you would clarify, we heard quite a bit about, and have heard quite a bit about, the corridor plan, and that's not what we're addressing tonight. We're addressing land use only, and that's why this case will go on to council. Council will make the final determination about whether or not to amend the area plan, and that's what I understood from the documentation that we've received. Can we have some clarification on that?
Well, the commission definitely can take information from the New Garden Road Strategic Plan, the policies and the other information, in considering whether or not a change in zoning is appropriate on there. The action by the commission tonight is only for the rezoning itself. That is correct. But in making that decision, the information in the plan is part of your consideration in trying to understand what the general growth policies and other things for that area are. Does that help clarify for you?
It's it sort of.
If I may perhaps build off of what Mr.
Please.
Kirkman said, as Mr. Kirkman said, it is relevant to the decision. The plan is relevant to the decision. The distinction on sort of what is being decided tonight is because by virtue of the amendment of the general statutes, Chapter 160D, as Mr. Kirkman referenced earlier, if the rezoning were approved and were inconsistent with the plan, that rezoning can deem amended, if you will, the plan. But that can only happen through council, which is why this would be a recommendation this evening. I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you. I understand that the Institute of Government was consulted on this so that the proper sequence would be followed. Is that right, Mr.
Yes, we wanted to clarify that because the big question was when you get into a small area plan that's more focused, is that held to the same standard as a citywide comprehensive plan? That's what the school government answered in the affirmative, that those small area plans are considered effectively components of the city's comprehensive plan for those areas. So I do want to be clear. I mean, the commission very much can consider the information in the plan in making their decision about whether or not the rezoning change is appropriate or not. The action of the commission tonight is only to take action on the rezoning.
Ms. Gaines?
How many units are there currently on the ground?
336.
I don't know exactly.
There's 18 buildings.
So currently, it is a density of 11.95. And there, and at 460, it is 16 units, which is 2 units less than the RM18 would allow. Is my math correct? Yeah. So they're going for RM18 because we don't have an RM16.
Correct. Any other questions? Unless there's, Ms. Maggot, did you have a question? Oh, okay. Without objection, then I'll close the public hearing.
I have one more question, real quick.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kirkman, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing well, thank you. If we make a decision today, how will that impact the GSO 2040 plan dealing with New Garden? Will that, if we make a decision one way and we find out that, if I'm hearing correctly, I'm trying to get the things straight in my head, it still had to go to city council, correct?
Yes, right.
So if the city council goes in a different direction, how will that impact our decision here?
Well, it's like any other decision where the commission makes a recommendation, like an annexation or something else on there. The council can obviously take additional information or other considerations and vote in a different manner on there. But they will have to make the ultimate decision on this case because of the plan amendment component. So the commission is just making a recommendation this evening.
The question, though, was about the comp plan. The
Correct.
20. It doesn't affect the comp plan. What it
The
would
New Garden
affect
Road strategic
is
plan
is the
yes.
New Garden area plan. Too many plans, huh? Mr.
Yeah,
Bryson?
I'm serious. I'm thinking about it. You talk about comp plan, New Garden plan, then the Richard T. Bryson plan, then the Mayor Skeen plan.
Well, just think of it. We have a citywide comprehensive plan, a general comprehensive plan for the city, and then there's a more specific plan for this specific geographic area of the city, the New Garden Road strategic plan. Because there's a finer grain of efforts, as was mentioned by several folks tonight, in considering the rezoning change. If the zoning is approved, city council must make the final decision if it's deemed to be inconsistent. So the change in zoning is inconsistent with the designation of the property within the New Garden Road plan right now. That part is what's triggering this conversation. But council's the only one that can make that final determination that the plan can be amended as part of the zoning change. The zoning commission's goal this evening, or the charge to you, is a recommendation on whether or not it makes sense to rezone from existing RM12 to the proposed CD RM18.
And the reason I ask this question, because wouldn't it be prudent to take care of the New Garden plan first, then come to us?
So I see my boss, Sue Schwartz, on the line. I think she needs to weigh in on this further, because obviously I'm not getting there, so I'm going to turn it over to Sue.
So, yeah, we apologize. So, yes, thank you. When the legislature changed the enabling legislation, basically what they enable us to do in terms of land use regulation, one of the issues was requiring communities to have a comprehensive plan in the first place. The second piece of it, and I don't have it in front of me, I'm sure Brent can pull it up with the specifics, but it basically did not want, so if I'm going to pull you back and see if this makes sense. Remember the days of the old comprehensive plan? And we would have to amend the GFLUM, the generalized future land use map, and then we'd have to recommend the rezoning, or we'd have several formal amendments that would go through, or the amendment of the plan would have to happen, then 2 months later the zoning case could go forward. And what the General Assembly had decided was that's an awful lot, that you have plans are guiding documents, they are policies, they are not regulatory documents, and they make that point very clear. In their definition of a comprehensive plan and the future land use maps, they declare then in the enabling legislation, it says that you don't need a separate vote, that if the council votes to do either rezone or create a change that is not the same as the adopted plan, by their vote of that change, they are amending the plan. Does that make sense? That helps switch it down. So you went from big maps, small plan, amending plans, multiple meetings, down to evaluating that case on its merits and how not just the map portion, but the policies and the recommendations of those plans, both the larger comprehensive plan that it has this larger vision for the overall city, as well as those finer grained documents in corridor plans and neighborhood plans. So I don't know, Mr. Bryson, does this help at all? So basically, they're looking for one action that covers multiple amendments. So, and in this case, if they, for example, if they choose to create, to approve this rezoning, it would in effect amend, that action would also amend the New Garden. The comprehensive plan is pretty broad and general, so I don't think we would have too much of a change. I'm looking at Russ, who knows the comprehensive plan more detail than I do. Does that help at all? Is there anything? And I kind of tried to layer it together.
Well, you said a lot, Sue, and I appreciate it.
I'm sorry,
but
Mr. Price.
the thing about it is, it's not so much the plans, it's that our processes, just to me, this is Richard T. thinking, we should go to City Council first, let's get the New Garden plan taken care of, then come back for the zoning. To me, it's like, well, we take care of the zoning, but we still got to go to the council, because the council may not deal with the New Garden plan.
You are not taking care of the zoning, even if this didn't happen, okay, even if the council, this aspect, the way the plan is written, it still would have gone to the city council. So if this enabling legislation didn't change, Russ, am I close to, you can tell me in front of all these people that I'm wrong, but you have to come to work tomorrow. Just kidding.
Luckily for me, you're not wrong, so I don't get to say that. No, you're correct. So basically, essentially streamlining the process so that when you make a decision on the zoning, it has the effect of changing the underlying map instead of breaking that into two processes. So that is also the case for city council when they make a decision on the zoning case. If it's different from the underlying plan map, then it amends or changes that map. So, but as Brent explained, you can't take final action because that's the way the state law is written. It's referred to as something that the council can do.
Vice Chair,
I have one question.
Just one at a time, please.
Yeah,
Mr. Bryson?
Well, I was going to mention, if you think about it, when we do annexations, right, it doesn't go to city council to get annexed and then come to us for zoning. It comes to us, we make a recommendation, it goes to council for final action. That's the closest thing I can think of to this from a process, from our perspective is we make a recommendation on the zoning, it then goes to council for final approval. So that, in my mind, that's where it sort of syncs up.
And just for me, I've been doing this for a while. It just, in my mind, I had GSO 2040 as the big plan. Now I'm hearing corridor plans. I'm like, wait a minute. Now we got to make sure that our plans meet up with the corridor plan and the GSO 2040.
But our task is to look only at the zoning and make a recommendation. Mm-hmm. And the ultimate authority, as I understand it, is city council will make the final decision in light of all the aspects. We have a narrower lane where we're looking at the land use, and we can make a recommendation in that regard. But then they can sit back further and look at the whole picture and see if all the pieces fall together, in my view of that.
And that's fine, but I think that's just backwards, but that's just me. I think we need to go to the city council first, then come to us, but that's just me.
So when I read, excuse me.
Hold on.
I was next.
Yes.
Sorry.
Miss Maggot.
Sorry.
Miss Maggot.
Commissioner Skink. And so in the reading, it says that the new garden strategic plan designates the subject property as moderate residential, correct? As it stands now.
That is correct.
Now, by making this change of residential classification on this property, it would become high residential classification, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that helps, that clarifies it a little, and that's why we have a little concern here.
And I guess if I can say, we've had, since the comprehensive plan was adopted, other rezoning cases along New Garden. So this is one of the first where there's not entirely a fit. I wouldn't say it's like, a huge conflict, but it's not, it doesn't line up just perfectly. So with the language and the discussion in the plan. And that's what the purpose of bringing it in a public forum for that discussion.
Okay, that's fair enough.
For it to be reviewed by you all.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. Ms. Gaines, did you want to add anything? Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, then we will, just to be clear, the public hearing is closed. If there are further questions or comments, we appreciate hearing from both of you online. Thank you. I would entertain a motion.
Well, I wanted to just make one comment.
Yes.
I went over and spoke with the agent on campus there today, and she said there's one vacancy in the 336 units. At the State of the Union for the city, the mayor mentioned that in the early 2000, 3 people a day were leaving Greensboro, and now we have 10 people a day moving to Greensboro. We need additional housing. I'm going to be voting in favor of this. This is 4 buildings in a existing development that when you go on Facebook, they rave about how fabulous the units are. So I'm going to be voting for this.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'll start this off by saying, and it probably shouldn't be, but this is probably one of the more interesting cases I've seen in the 5 years I've served on zoning. One, because it's the first time that I've really seen density that goes above the per acre permittance of the LDO. I just hadn't seen that before. Maybe I have or hadn't noticed it, but typically when I see things built, when it says RM12, it's 12 units per acre, and in this instance, it's 14 units per acre. And the reason for that, as I was counseled by somebody that I called and asked about it who was involved in the UDO, is through a old building principle called triangulation, where you could apparently build higher than the density based on how things were moved around. Yeah, Mr. Kirkman, you can correct me on that, but...
Well, and I guess I need to clarify, too, that at the end of the day, this was built before the Unified Development Ordinance was in place. So that's really where you're coming from, is this, every time the citywide zoning changes happen, they try to assign zoning as close as possible to the existing
But the LDO
development.
would not permit you to build in this today more than 12 units per acre.
That is correct.
Okay. When I look at the area as it sits today, and I look at the other RM18 zonings that are on this corridor, they are not, in fact, RM18. That's what's interesting about this. They are, but they're conditioned. One is about 14.8 units per acre. It's 11.483 acres, and it's 151 units is what it's limited down to. The other one, I think, is something like 30-some-odd acres, and it's actually limited to 500 units, but it also is sort of an odd situation where, according to the wording, it sounds like it was really meant to be townhomes, and that is sure as heck what's there right now. So where I was, and I feel bad for the applicant in this because this is probably one of the best developed areas in the city in my mind. I've driven up and down this, and there was a ton of thought that was put into it, a ton of thought that was put into the heights of the structures and where things are. It is really just well put together. When I look at the RM18, the other apartment complex, I'll say they started off with a lower height and moved down the land. I just was very well done. Where I am having difficulty this evening, and why I will not be supporting this application is, and again, I agree with Commissioner Magid, we need housing. The housing has to be, in my mind, it has to fit the context of the area. And what I am concerned about is, and I believe that the applicant has done an admirable job with the buffering, I just don't think it's wide enough, and that's where I come down to. Also, I'm concerned about the density close to the road. And so for those two reasons, I can't get there tonight, but I think it's a good project, and I hope you continue working on it as you get to go to City Council.
Any other comments? Do I have a motion?
I'd like to give a motion, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Bryson.
Item Z-23-01-005. The Greensboro Planning and Zoning Commission believes that its action to recommend approval of the rezoning request for the property at 1921-A New Garden Road from RM12 Residential Multifamily 12 to CDRM 18 Conditional District Residential Multifamily 18 to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed CDRM 18 zoning district is, as conditioned, permits uses which fit the context of surrounding area and limits negative impacts on the adjacent properties. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson.
Vernon Alford, I second.
Thank you, Mr. Alford. We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
2 nays. This constitutes a favorable recommendation and is subject to a public hearing at the Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 City Council meeting. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is item Z-23-04001, a rezoning request from R3, residential single family 3, to CDO, conditional district office, for the property identified as 347 West Vandalia Road, generally described as south of West Vandalia Road and east of Randleman Road, 0.35 acres. Mr. Kirkman?
Yes, thank you, Chair Connor. Again, the request is to rezone from R3, residential single family, to CDO, conditional district office. North and east of the subject property is currently zoned R3, residential single family. South of the subject property is zoned RM12, residential multifamily. West of the subject property is zoned CDCM, conditional district commercial medium, and CM, commercial medium. The subject property currently contains a single-family dwelling. North and east of the request are single-family dwellings. South of the request are multifamily dwellings, and west of the request is a bank and a veterinary hospital. This is a view of the subject property as it's seen from West Vandalia Road. This shows a single-family dwelling located north of the request, zoned R3. This is a single-family dwelling located east of the request, zoned R3. These are multifamily dwellings located south of the request, zoned RM12. This is the bank that's located west of the request, zoned CDCM. This is an eating and drinking establishment located northwest of the request, zone CM. This is a view facing east on West Vandalia Road. The subject property here would be on your right. And this is a view facing west on West Vandalia Road. The subject property here is going to be on your left. This is the condition that was submitted by the applicant and advertised as part of the hearing. The GSO 2040 Conference Plan designates property as urban general within an urban mixed-use corridor and adjacent to a district-scale activity center on the future built form map and as commercial on the future land use map. Staff has concluded that the rezoning request does support the comprehensive plan's growing economic competitiveness big idea to build a prosperous, resilient economy, creating equitable opportunities to succeed, and fulfilling in our framework goal to arrange our land uses where we live, work, attend school, shop, and enjoy our free time to create a more vibrant and livable Greensboro. The proposed CDO designation as condition allows a mix of office, professional service, and residential uses that can provide an appropriate transition between the higher intensity commercial retail uses that are fronting along Randleman Road and the adjacent nearby residential uses located to the east. Care should be taken with respect to building orientation, materials, height, and visual buffers to ensure appropriate transitions to these lower density residential uses on adjacent properties. Staff is recommending approval of this request, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? If not, we have up to 10 minutes combined for the applicant and anyone speaking in favor of the application. If you'd come to the podium and identify yourself with your name and address, please.
Hey, my name's Leo Pierce Limeberry. This is my wife, Lauren Limeberry, and I am the executor of the state of the property at 347 West Vandalia. And my dad passed away in October, and the property has now become part of our job to, take care of. And, this is very nerve-wracking. I've never done anything like this before, but I'm just going to be honest because that's all I know how to be. When we were praying about what we should do, we felt from the Lord that this was the avenue to take as far as prospering the neighborhood where my dad lived his whole life. He lived in that house his whole life. We feel like this would benefit both the neighborhood, the surrounding area, and also us. We're building a home. We've been missionaries serving the nations for the last 3 or so years, and this is all new to us. So we've sought counsel from the people that we look up to, and we felt like this was what the Lord told us to do, and what the people told us that we should do. So this is where we are. We went through the process of how to rezone. We knew that there would be an opportunity to where we might not get the rezoning, but we felt like it was a risk we were willing to take because we felt like this was the best way to go. So, I have my good friend Yvonne, who's helping us with the selling of the property, and she's with us online today, and she might be able to answer more of the harder questions, but just wanted to give you my heart as to why we're doing what we're doing. We both work for Roto-Rooter. If y'all have any plumbing problems, just give us a call. Our heart really is, I just want to honor my dad. When he passed away suddenly, I was in the hospital with him for like 13 days, and it was tough and it was unexpected. And there wasn't a lot of help for me once he passed away to be able to navigate some of the issues that we're facing now. So I had to really lean on the Lord and who I believe, and my wife has helped me out tons. But, we're kind of just taking steps, and we felt like this was the best opportunity for him to bless us in his death but also for us to bless the community that he grew up with. So that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Thank you. I see that we have Ms. Rush online. If you'd like to give your name and address, please. We have up to 7 minutes and 17 seconds remaining.
Thank you. My name is Yvonne Rush. My address is 5726 Silver Skyway in Greensboro. And I am representing Leo and Lauren as their real estate agent. And I just wanted to say, at first we were just listing the house as a potential commercial property and not trying to go through the rezoning process, because I was advised that if you're trying to get something rezoned, it's better to know exactly what's going there. And since we didn't know what the potential new owner would put there, we didn't try to do that. However, once we put the house on the market, we did have some people that were interested. One lady wanted to put a counseling office there. She was a counselor, and the only reason she didn't move forward was because she said she did not want to go through the rezoning process herself. So that is why Leo and Lauren and I decided let's try to get it rezoned. And after talking with some of the city's representatives, we decided to try to get it rezoned to the office commercial, because we felt like that would be the least intrusive to the neighborhood. And it also still allows the new owner to use that as a residence. So it could still be a residence, or it could be a small office such as a doctor's office or an insurance office or real estate office, something like that, that is going to bring value to the neighborhood and not cause a lot of traffic and not be a disruption or a disturbance, but to something that would bring value and equity to the neighborhood. Also, we know that that commercial zoning would raise the property values and not lower them. It would make improvements to the home and to the property, and so the surrounding areas would only improve from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? There any? We have 5 minutes and 23 seconds. Yes, Ms. Gaines.
Clarification, in looking at the permitted use table, and Ms. Rush brought up a point, that even with, in the office district, that it could still be a house, still could be occupied as a residence. Is that correct?
Yes, single-family dwellings are allowed by right in the office district.
Thank you.
So the existing property could be used for that purpose.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Peterson.
So there's 2 R3 single-family dwellings directly across the street, brand new. And based upon what you said, the best use of this property would be commercial, conditional commercial, medium.
Yeah, I think there's some confusion. So the request is for conditional district office.
Office.
I think there's some confusion about the question about a commercial use of the property, but it's conditional district office. So office does not allow retail, restaurants, auto service uses, some of the things you might find in commercial medium, but does allow for office, personal services, the general offices that mentioned by Ms. Rush. So I hope that helps. I know that I got confused a little bit on some of the email discussions, but it is an office zoning that's being requested.
Mr. Bryson, did you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. Hope you're doing well.
I'm blessed.
Good, good. Did you have a chance to reach out to the neighbors?
Yes,
and
we
talk
did.
to the neighbors about this?
Yeah. We sent out emails. We were told that we would to give a vision for why we're doing what we're doing. So, to the best of our ability, we shared what we felt like I'm going to say the Lord because that's just what we do. What the Lord had put on our heart to do, and we just shared with them from our heart. And there was some opposition, and we kind of expected that, and we is it rebutted, I guess, or we responded. We responded to what they to their concerns, and we tried to give answers to why they were concerned. And I appreciate their concern. The last thing we want to do is hurt the community. Our heart is to help the community. So yeah, yes, sir, we did.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? If you wanted to make any further comment, you have 5 minutes and 23 seconds.
I'm good. Are you good, Yvonne?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
All right, then we have a total of 10 minutes available for those who want to speak in opposition. I have Cheryl McKeever and Crystal Black. If you'd come to the podium and identify yourself with your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Foxworth, and I live at 805 Ernest Court in High Point, North Carolina. During the week and on the weekends, I reside at 345 West Vandalia with my parents, Norman and Judy Foxworth. First and foremost, let me say that if you've been out there and you've looked, this area There are homes, including 347 and 345 and down the road, that have been there since the 1940s. Our home was my dad's childhood home, so it has always been single-family residential homes. There have been 2 homes built across the street recently that sold very quickly. As you've stated already in this meeting, we have an extreme need for homes, for housing in Greensboro. What sense does it make to rezone this to where there is the possibility that it won't be used for a residential home? You can't guarantee what will go in to that particular acreage and home. It just does not make sense, quite frankly. One of the biggest concerns, in all honesty, for my family simply is a safety issue. Every day, 7 days a week, my parents have grandchildren and great-grandchildren in their home that they feel 100% comfortable letting them go out in the backyard and play every day. If you choose to rezone this, you take away that safety and security that we have, because again, you can't guarantee for us what will go onto that property or into that home. So I would really ask that you take that into consideration. As far as reaching out to us in an email, I have no idea what Mr. Lineberry is speaking of. We have never been contacted regarding this. We did not get any communication until we received the notice of being within 750 feet of the proposed rezoning process. So again, I thank you for your time and your willingness to just listen to us, but I do ask respectfully, I plead with you to take into consideration what we say tonight. I ask that you protect our rights, protect our neighborhood. It is a small neighborhood, but nevertheless, it is a community. And I ask that you do what is best for the collective group, not one individual, but the collective group, and maintain this residence as a residential property. Thank you for your time.
I do have a question for you.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Engel.
And I just, again, looking at the area, there's commercial next door to it, and there's RM12 behind it. You've got, some form of medium residential behind you. Is your opposition to anything but single family, or would you be okay with something with some more density to it, residential, or if there were buffers, like, some sort of fencing put up? I mean, just kind of trying to get where, from a land use perspective, I can look at it and say, you don't want any sort of density increase?
In all honesty, I'd like it to stay the way that it is.
Okay.
Because in truth, again, if you think about the safety aspect for us, when you've got a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old out in the backyard playing, and you're as close to I am to you right now. Mm-hmm. And again, you can't guarantee me what's going to go in there as far as a possible business that might go in there. You can't guarantee that. So my preference is that it stay the same.
Any other questions? All right, we have 7 minutes and 34 seconds remaining.
Cheryl McIver, 404 West Mount Castle Drive. I'd just like to note that Andrea lives next door to this property. The entrance to my neighborhood of Woodley, it's about 1,000 feet, so we're right outside that 750 feet buffer. I will say that the commercial property that you see on that map is Randleman Road facing, right? Regardless that this property is facing West Vandalia, the abut is all Randleman Road property. There are no commercial office zoned other than a daycare in any part of West Vandalia between South Elm Eugene Street and Rehoboth Church Road. If we start this now, right, the next thing will be another property. We'll want the same rezoning, and they'll have the good excuse, oh, well, this one was rezoned. West Vandalia is residential, meaning multifamily and single family. Other than a daycare, there's no commercial there. It is like a side road, and I would submit to you guys that if this is rezoned, you don't know what can go there, right, except for what's in the qualifications. However, if you leave it single family, there is some permitting allowed for other uses. So my suggestion would be leave it single family. If it's someone that wants to do another use, let them go through the permitting process. You just told me that there are 10 people a day coming into the city that's looking for housing. Well, why would we change a single family home? I'm before you guys more often than I would like to be. And each time I try to fight density, you guys tell me we need housing. So what do you guys tell me today? That we don't need housing, that we need housing and commercial? Or can you say, keep the single family housing, that is the best land use? There's plenty of empty offices and spaces right there on Randomer Road. We don't have a lack of them, but we do have a lack of housing. And as far as the benefit of increase, that will not help single family homes. That commercial, changing that to commercial is not going to increase the value of a single family home. And I think that's a disservice to those people that just bought those 2 brand new built homes right diagonally across from this home. That's a disservice for them. And we did speak with them. They're not here. There are one that had they were Vietnamese. There was kind of a language barrier there, but they don't want it changed either. But did tell us that they couldn't be here tonight. So at this point, I'll pause so you guys can ask me any questions.
Are there any questions?
And we can have Mike bring back up that map if it would help anyone with the visual.
Would you like me to do that?
That would be fine. Thank you.
Bring it back up.
I think it's your first.
Looking at the map in our book, it looks like the building next to this house is where the Wells Fargo Bank is. And there's parking, visible parking on Vandalia. Across the street was a Hardee's, and there was visible parking there as well. So already there was commercial happening on.
Miss Maggie, can you move your microphone closer to you?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I'm looking at the map, just reading the map. And so to the west of this property is where the Wells Fargo is, and there are, it looks like parking spaces there that are facing Vandalia. And then across the street was the Hardee's, and there were parking spaces there. So there already has been existing commercial on Vandalia.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it.
Yeah,
I'm just
no
reading.
worries. Okay, go ahead. You clarify.
One of the issues, if you look right around a corner on Randoman Road, Hardee's is closed down. One step over, that's a resident that was turned commercial. Now, with that option, that's a daycare center, seamstress place, and they wash cars behind it. So it's just, it turned out to be a whatever type business. And so if we're going to say they can do that with this property, then it's just opening up options for business, whatever fits within the parameters to put there. But like I say, it's inconsistent with that stretch of Vandalia, even going further east. There's nothing like that going further east.
And Commissioner, if I may, I'm trying to kind of point to it on the screen here. So this is West Vandalia, but keep in mind this Hardee's and this Wells Fargo, they are Randoman Road facing businesses. They have a large lot size, but that is Randoman Road. That is not West Vandalia. They have, if you also look, there are very extensive buffers between that commercial property and the residential properties, by design, may I say. All along here, there's a daycare, but there are no, from Rehoboth Church all the way to South Am Eugene, there are no commercial properties, none. So if we start this here, it's going to continue to scope creep on down. And this is the entrance into my neighborhood. This is a small kind of collector street, and I see no need to add anything that could cause the increase in traffic. And you talk about density, we have multifamily back here. We have it to the right of us. Like, we have all of this. There's lots of open business opportunities, and we have 1, 2, there's 3, 4, there's probably more, 5, probably 6 shopping centers along Randleman Road if someone really wants to operate any kind of business. And I understand, I understand the applicants. My grandfather passed away. He left a house. And you know what I'm doing with it? Because I feel it's the right thing to do, is I'm remodeling it. And I'm turning it into something that someone else can live in and love. That's what I'm doing with it. And your next door neighbor, she just spoke, the neighbor right here at 341, I think it is, they're Vietnamese. I spoke with a neighbor across the street. Unfortunately, these are all people that did not have the ability to get here and did not understand the process. I'm not sure how planning comes up with some of the recommendations. I understand there's some criteria, but it's not all black and white. There are no commercial businesses, none, on West Vandalia Road between Rehoboth and South M. Eugene. There's none. These are Randleman Road facing businesses.
Are there any other questions? If not, some of the time was taken answering questions, but we do have 4 minutes and 21 seconds remaining on the clock.
Good evening, Crystal Black, 1120 High Stone Drive. I am here in representation of the Southeast Greensboro Coalition, in which Cheryl usually is here representing us. I just want to speak to a couple of things that I heard tonight. One was that the community had been notified. We did get notification after we reached out to the Planning and Zoning Department, and the realtor reached out to us. The realtor mentioned several times in the email that the goal is to achieve the maximum amount of funding for this property. And that is the reason why they want to go commercial, that they did not want to invest the money into the property to bring it up to par, is what how she described it, to be able to sell it for the amount that the houses across the street that just sold for. That's kind of not a community problem. It's a residential community. When you turn right off of Randleman Road and you pass that bank, you do not stop passing homes until you get to Brown Recreation Center, which is probably 1.5 miles down the street. Unless it's a church. There are a couple of churches on the way, but this is a residential community, and I know Cheryl has been to this commission many times, fighting for the parameter of commercial and a lot of development that's been going on in Southeast Greensboro, but this is something that already exists. And when you speak to housing, and when I hear the sympathy that's spoken to specific communities, when I hear area plan for specific communities because they have those protections, there's no area plans in our area. There's no protections for us to have 30 minutes of dialogue about whether the plan fit in the plan. We don't get those opportunities. The only opportunity that we get is to come here and explain to you that this is a residential area where people sleep. We are already inundated with the blight of Randleman Road. And what you're going to approve, if you do, is them being able to turn right and continue that blight. I drove down Randleman Road. Every home that has been converted is a car lot, a tattoo parlor, and they don't maintain them. They don't maintain them. So we have somebody who is going to be left to live beside a commercial property that does not keep the same residential standards, because we know our city. You cannot get away with not cutting your grass, but a business owner can get away with a lot more than a residential owner, and that's just the fact of the city. So I implore to you to look at the map in which this, I'm 50. This neighborhood has been preserved as long as I've been a child. I was born in this neighborhood. I grew up and I built in this neighborhood, and I tell that story every time I come because there has to be some preservation in black spaces in Greensboro. We can't preserve the West. We can't continue to preserve the North and not have some space that we have a conversation around preservation. So with that said, this area has been the way that it has. The people that have lived here and invested in this area for years. We didn't move. Mr. Foxcroft and his family didn't move. I moved houses, but I did not move proximity. So that speaks volumes of the area and the community that we have. But what I can tell you, when Cheryl and I were out on foot today, none of the neighbors that were in walking distance of this property had any engagement with the property owners. None of them. So I'm not really sure what conversation that was or what email went out. That's why we know about the language barrier from one of them. So I question that statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have up to 5 minutes of rebuttal time available for those in favor of the application. And if you would please repeat your name and address.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Pierce Lomberry, and my address, well, the address is 347 West Vandalia, Greensboro, North Carolina. So I want to say a couple of things, and I'll give opportunity for Yvonne to speak. When I was talking about reaching out to the community, as I also said, I needed a lot of help from some people to help me to how to go through this process. So I kind of depended on some of, Yvonne and these gentlemen here to help me through the process. So when we were going through the process, they told us that there would be people who would probably appeal the rezoning. So when we got their appeals, that's when we responded. So as far as going out into the community and going knocking on doors and telling people that we were going to do this, no, I did not do that. And I really, really appreciate the concerns of, Mr. Foxworth. I grew up right next to him. My pawpaw lived next door to him, and my dad lived in that house his whole life. So I also understand the concerns of people that's lived there the whole life. I lived there half of my life. So, yes, we are trying to profit from this property to build our own house. If we had the money to put into this house, and I mean, I want to keep it in the family, but we felt like this was the best option for our family to benefit me and my wife and the family we're raising.
And it stays open to family.
And it stays open to family. So the commercial zoning that we applied for was so that it could be a residence dwelling as well as a small office space. So and I put here, someone living there in a residential property can cause more disruption and decline to the neighborhood than a reputable small business owner. So I understand also that you don't know what kind of business might go in there. Well,
we did put limitations.
We did put limitations as to what could go in that office space. And I wanted to put this too. It says 63 properties that are in the 750-foot radius of the property. 28 of them are owned by LLC or other business corporations. There are 9 entities that own 23 of the 63 properties. Only 18 of the 63 owners actually appear to reside in their home. The other 45 owners do not even reside in Greensboro. Therefore, only 28% of the surrounding property owners are using the property as a personal residence. So that was some information that Yvonne had given me, and she given to the 750-foot radius of what we're trying to do here. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that we want to sell it to be able to help help our family, but we also want to benefit the community. I'm not trying to, I'm not like some landlord trying to make a bunch of money. I'm just trying to take care of my family. So I hope y'all can see my heart behind it, and y'all too. And yeah, so that's all I have to say. And if Yvonne wants to speak to any of it, she can too.
We have 1 minute and 32 seconds remaining.
I have a question.
Excuse me, we first have a question.
So, just within the proximity that I can see here, and I can't speak to, you said you emailed some folks. Did you send out a letter to the, let's call it the 12 or 14 or 15 homes in proximity that you could see from the house? Did you send a letter or anything to the addresses that the city provided?
So the email that me and Yvonne worked on together is what we sent out.
How did you know the email addresses of the people that live there? Is there
from what they sent us. So
Ask Yvonne to help.
Yvonne, could you help me here? I don't even know the name of this.
Yes.
The people who were helping
We did.
me.
We also did send a letter to the property owners that went out.
Okay.
It just went out not that long ago, about this past week. So some of them maybe did not receive it yet, but with the holidays, but it did go out to all the property owners within 750 feet of the home.
Okay.
And that was a little late on our part because I got the dates mixed up. I apologize. And we're handling the probate court situation. There's just a lot we're juggling right now, so I do apologize about that.
Got a question for you. I noticed you said you're trying to help the community out. Have you visited or drove up and down Ranneman Road and seen some of the R3s that would turn into commercial and rezone and see how those properties look?
Well, I know that I spent half of my teenage years on Ranneman Road, and of course, Ranneman Road could use some help. It just,
The reason I'm asking is because there's the community concern, and I understand that you was raised in that home and what those properties look like now on Ranneman Road. That's what I'm speaking to, because 20 years ago it looked fine, but now it doesn't. And just as the young lady from the community was stating, those residential properties that turn commercial is just. Some of those places look like it's a third world country, so I just want to know if you actually visited and seen and give you a better intake of the concern of that community.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? You have 1 minute and 28 seconds remaining. I didn't know if you wanted to speak further or if Ms. Rush had something that she wanted to add.
Go ahead, Yvonne.
Yes, I would like to. And we already touched on that, after the city sent out letters, those people that did respond, we responded to them via email, but then we also sent our own letter out as well. I just wanted to talk about.
Could you put your camera on, please?
Well, I can't because it was turned off by Luke, and it says that he has to turn it back on. Well, here we go. Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. So I did want to speak. I know a big concern is that they're saying there's no commercial property on Vandalia. However, that's not true. It was already brought up that yes, Wells Fargo faces Randleman Road. However, the lot next door to Wells Fargo and next door to the subject property actually faces Vandalia, and it is a parking lot. And then 4 lots to the east is Sunshine House, which is a huge daycare. And that is on the same stretch, and it's been there, for a while. So that is there. And then I know safety was brought up as an issue, but I think if there's an office there, someone's there, 9 to 5 normally. Right now, it's a vacant home, which is obviously not necessarily safe either. There, I know a concern is housing, but with this zoning, with the office zoning, it can still be a residence. So we're not saying that it can't be. Someone can buy it and make it their home, just like they could do if we didn't change the zoning. And again, selling, I know there's a concern about what might go there, but speaking to the offices, the homes on Randleman that look abandoned or look like a third world country.
The time limit is up, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have up to 5 minutes of rebuttal time for those in opposition. If you just repeat your name and address for this.
Yes, ma'am. Andrea Foxworth, 345 West Vandalia Road.
Thank you, Ms. Foxworth.
And ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for your time. But let's just call this what it is. When he first got up here, he stated that he had reached out to the community and had responded to the community. There's been no communication with my family whatsoever. We have never received anything other than the letter that we got stating that we were a property within 750 feet of a rezoning request. That is the only communication that we have had. That is it. When he got back up here, the story has now changed. We've sent out something, but maybe it went out, maybe it's Easter, maybe people haven't gotten it. So the story's changed. Let's call it a spade, a spade, a spade. The bottom line is this is about the almighty dollar. And it is about how much money can I get for the property. I implore you, this is not about prospering our community. This is the beginning, if you approve it, of a way to chip away at our community. One little piece at a time. That's what this is about. Money for him, and again, for our community, it chips away our neighborhood, our rights to our neighborhood, our residential area that has been that way. My dad is 70 years old, and this area has been residential that entire time. So I implore you tonight to see this for what it is. Value of property is not one of the things that you are supposed to take into consideration with rezoning, is my understanding. And I don't sit in your seats, so if I'm wrong, I apologize. But please see this for what it is. And please, I implore you, please protect our rights to our residents, to our neighborhood, to stay intact as it is. Please, I implore you tonight, this is not about prospering our neighborhoods. This is about chipping away one little piece at a time. Thank you again for your time tonight.
Thank you. We have 2 minutes and 52 seconds remaining of rebuttal time. If you'd give your name and address again, please.
Crystal Black, 1120 Highstone Drive. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. When the realtor was mentioning that there's commercial property in the parking lots, that was by design of the Hardys that needed 2 entrances. That's by design of the bank who needs an exit for their tellers in the back. They are front-facing properties to Randleman Road. If you drive down Vandalia, you will not find commercial property. They did not notify the community. We reached out to them. That's where this email conversation that they keep talking about, it happened because we reached out based on seeing the zoning sign. We reached out to zoning and planning. They connected us with the realtor. Before then, we had not heard from anyone. Not even the neighbors in proximity had heard from anyone. We walked that space to get them engaged, found out that they knew nothing about it, found out that there's also language barriers. So there just has not been the right work done around this, and I think the wrong representation for the clients, to be honest, because not investing in the property and trying to do a quick sale doesn't sound like what they really want to have intent for that land. Sounds like they really want to have it as a valuable piece, but it sounds like they're being guided to do a quick sale for whatever you can get it zoned for. And then I hear that the realtor is saying that the houses on Randleman Road look like third world country was what she just said. Exactly. Who?
Mr.
That was what
Peterson.
you said? She said something in reference to it because I heard her voice. And that's the way they all look. Tire shops, tattoo shops, car lots. The grass in the back becomes the car lot. The house is the office. Grass in the back is the car lot. Graveled in, of course. And that's what we have dealt with. We have plenty of those already. And now you're saying, now you would say, we also want to inundate that into your community where you lay your head. We're dealing with Randleman Road already. I'm sure you've seen the news. So it's not a secret about Randleman Road. We don't want Randleman Road to move over into the spaces that we're trying to protect. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have any questions or comments? We have 24 seconds.
And I would just like to reiterate, it can remain a single-family home zoning, and if someone wants a different use, they can go through the permitting office. We don't have to change it to commercial, and then they can live in it if they want to. We can keep it single-family, and if they want a permit to do something different, they can go through the permitting office. What is wrong with that? Does it bring the best dollar? Maybe. So I'll end there. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Without objection, then we'll close the public hearing. Are there any other comments or questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Bryson.
I've been listening intently to both sides on this particular property, and I've been in Greensboro since 1995, and I'm familiar with this area. I question changing a single parcel that's 0.35 acres to commercial would change the property value. That is not something you can guarantee because of zoning change. You got to look at something called the highest and best use of the property. Riding up and down Vandalia, I do not remember seeing a whole lot of commercial on Vandalia, facing Vandalia. Another thing, when we go through this process as commissioners, one of the things we talk about when we approve a zoning request, one of the bullet points is the request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community. And I question about this one because the applicant did not make a concerted effort to talk to the neighbors. Email is not a concerted effort. If you didn't send a letter out, if you didn't walk down the street, knock on the door, I question if the applicant really has the best interest of the neighborhood. How do you know if you haven't talked to the neighbors? That's my question. So with that being said, I can't support this particular request.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Any other comments?
I want to
Mr.
give
Engel?
the applicant just some feedback. Looking at this tonight, we do, and if you watched other zoning commission meetings, we, I think as a group, have always valued outreach as one of the tenets of what we do. It makes our job as commissioners a lot easier. It doesn't seem like that happened to the degree that we would have an expectation coming in, okay? The one thing I will give you, we call this a permitted use table, okay? Looking at the application, just kind of judging it from where I've got it right now, there are a lot of uses on this table within the office use. What I've got conditioned out is a cemetery, okay? And so, like, I always think when I'm looking at these, what's the narrative, what's it's going to be, you know, if it's going to be a counseling office, then, you know, it could be conditioned down to, say, residential uses and a counseling office, right? And then I could look at that and say, oh, I see what that's going to be. A lot of times people try to leave it as open as possible because that's the high, you know, for them, that's going to be the best situation. For a lot of times in infill, we have to look at that on the merits. And in this case, you know, even though it's 0.35 acres, and I will lay that in, there's a lot on here. The other thing your neighbors talked about here tonight, and again, if you'd had those conversations before, you might have heard it. We talk about buffers. You heard it in the first case that we talked about buffer. That could be fence, that could be shrubbery, that could be anything, screening, however you want to look at it. Typically, with unlike uses, those are typically pretty good things. And I know there are some that are included within the office zoning. Office is considered transitional. What I look at in support of what you're doing tonight, from Lakefield down, that is minus the 4 lots, right? That's all residential medium and commercial down on Randleman Road. So I get the sense that there could be some increased density. I'm not in support of the office zoning that I've got here in front of me as it's written, but I want to give you that feedback. You may appeal this to council or otherwise and talk to some folks, but that would be, as I'm looking at this, the application just on its merits, that's the gaps that I see that I can't support it tonight.
Any other comments? I would also have to say, I'm sorry, the public hearing is closed.
I was just going to respond to a question. Okay, thank you.
I will say that I don't find it necessarily negative for somebody to want to make profit from real estate.
Amen.
And when I first drove up to this property and saw the bank and the parking lot and everything, I realized they're facing Randleman Road. Thought, well, that's a hard house to live in. Who would want to live there as a single-family residential because of what it is surrounded by? However, I understand what we're hearing from the neighbors and the neighborhood association, that it is critical that this not creep in another direction. And I appreciate Mr. Peterson's comments with his history in the neighborhood. And so I think that it is the better use to maintain the zoning that we have there. And again, there may be some other uses. There might be a different approach. Perhaps something could be different when it goes before council. But I agree with my colleagues, Mr. Bryson and Mr. Engel, and I won't be supporting this. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion. Item Z-23-04-001. The Greensboro Planning and Zoning Commission believe that its actions to recommend denial of the rezoning request for the property of 347 West Vandalia Road from R3 residential single family to CD-0 conditional district office to be consistent with the updated GSO 2040 comprehensive plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public's interest for the following reasons. The request is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed CD-0 zoning district as condition does not limit negative impacts on the adjacent properties, nor does it permit uses which fix the context of surrounding area. The request is not reasonable due to the size, physical condition, and other attributes of the area. It will be a detriment to the neighbors and surrounding community, and denial is in the public's interest.
We have a motion and a second to deny the request. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
One opposition. Zoning denials constitute final action unless an appeal is submitted in writing to the planning department and the appeal fee is paid within 10 days. All zoning appeals will be subject to a public hearing at the Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 City Council meeting. We've gone way beyond the time limit when we normally would take a break. I know that there are people that may be tired waiting, but we have to allow some break time. And we'll take a brief recess for 10 minutes. I have 5 to 8. We'll come back at 8:05. Thank you.
Recording stopped. Welcome to this latest installment of Greensboro Business Profiles. I'm your host, Carla Banks. Join me as I feature a variety of business owners who choose to call Greensboro their home. It goes without saying, the small business community is critical to our local economy. Greensboro Business Profiles highlights their services and celebrates their contributions. Let's meet today's profile.
My dad's name is Ben, so I'm the son. My partner Joe is his grandson, and then my grandson Isaiah would be his great-grandson. So we are Ben's boys. You know, our desire for our staff members, for everybody that comes in, is that they feel the love, that we provide a sense of comfort, and that's why we call it comfort food. And then, you know, the food just needs to be good. My son Joe, his vision was to have a place that looks exactly like this place. He wanted to represent all the community. So he reached out to some local artists, and so the artwork you see on the wall are all local artists. Most of them are minority artists. Our goal was to be as like a village where we touch as many lives as we possibly can. Friendly Shopping Center is just a wonderful opportunity. So we've tried to create an opportunity for those that might not have a way to make a footprint at Friendly Shopping Centers. First of all, I really thank God for favor because that's what we've experienced a lot of, just us being in this building. We were originally across the street in Wolfgang Puck with the possibility of maybe one day moving into that building. Starbucks decided they were coming, so we had to move out in May of last year. Friendly just gave us an opportunity to just say, we're not going to keep it, so if you guys can use it, take it with you, and it just worked perfect. We looked at some sites when we were trying to do brick and mortar in Greensboro. We looked at some sites in Charlotte. We looked at some sites in High Point. We looked at some sites in Thomasville. And nothing was a really good fit. And that leads back to why we built a food trailer. We kind of gave up on the possibility of having a brick and mortar building. So we just said, you know what, we'll build a food trailer. We'll work out of a food trailer. If that's successful, we'll build another food trailer. So now we take the food trailer out on corporate events, and we are just so busy here and so excited to be here. I'll add this little caveat. We were extremely busy from opening. But the day that we got our signing and we put it on the building, having a minority-owned, African-American-owned business in Friendly Shopping Center is a big deal. They've been here, I think, since 1957. And my understanding is we're the first. I think it was shocking for a lot of people because we went from going 100 miles an hour to 200 miles an hour basically overnight when that sign went up. The community was just excited. And then as we've done stories to talk about how important mentoring is to us and growing the next future generation, I've got young folk here who have seen it from ground up. They've seen furniture move, and they've seen what you do to start a business. Some of them aspire one day, maybe to have their own food trailer. There were some opportunities when it was time to move over here. It was going to take a lot of money. And we wondered, okay, now where are we going to get some of these resources and some of these other things? But all of those resources were supplied. And I really can't thank Friendly Shopping Center enough because they really went out of their way to make every resource they had available to us and put us in a position that we could be successful. There have been a lot of people along the way who have just been inspirational and words of encouragement, coming to eat with us, bringing friends back to eat with us. A lot of the young people that are here today, some of them, parents, saw some interviews where we talked about the mentoring piece, where we try to touch the importance of being respectful, the importance of being responsible with your resources, talk to them about a financial plan, talk to them about figuring out what you want to do in the future. I'm amazed that I come out and talk to them and they'll say, you know what, this is just how my grandma did it. And I was like, okay, well, that's not unusual if they're my color, but when they're not my color, and they don't speak the language I speak, and they still say, oh, I feel like I'm back home. this is how my grandma did it. So my truck says it right. It's the anointing that makes the difference, because we can season stuff and we can put stuff in it and we can try to get it best we can. But to have the ability for whoever eats it, that it makes them happy, that's bigger than us. We have 28 employees. With the cranking up of we're gonna have a couple of people that like work the routes for the Food Lion situation, and the distribution piece. It's going to be incredible. When you come in, you get to experience Ben's Boys, but you also get to have this wonderful cultural experience. If you are a minority who are interested in finding books and crafts that kind of look like your children look, there's an awesome selection of children's books and self-help books, and we're all about that, and mentoring, and just making a positive difference in the community. I've been able to remain humble through this whole thing, and when I tell you there are just so many wonderful things that are happening to us so fast that every day I'm just kind of like, the distribution company, we're working with colleges and universities, and that's going to crank up in the fall. We went from thinking we're going to be in 6 Food Lions to finding out yesterday we're going to be in 25. As a kid, you dream stuff. I dreamed. I dreamed one day I'd have a restaurant. I knew what it was like to run something somebody else started. I mean, I could follow the blocks. I could connect the dots. But to start something that you can put your name on and call it your own, that's precious, because we get busier and busier every week, and smiling faces and loving customers and people that bring their sisters back and their relatives back, and they tell their friends to come. That's the best sort of advertisement. We could never afford what our customers do for us. So we are eternally grateful for that.
I hope you enjoyed meeting today's business profile. If you are a business owner who would like to be featured, or you want to nominate someone for Greensboro Business Profiles, send me an email. I look forward to hearing from you and spotlighting our next business profile.
There's a new name for play in Greensboro. The Miriam P. Brenner Children's Museum is open and ready for play in downtown Greensboro.
The exciting change for us today is a new name, a name to acknowledge and say thank you for an extraordinary gift by a very generous family, Nancy and Frank Brenner. And so we are delighted and thrilled that our new name is now Miriam P. Brenner Children's Museum.
Frank, why did you want to get involved with the museum?
Look at this. I mean, once you bring your grandchildren here, you're hooked for life, and it's just such a great asset for Greensboro. So we're excited.
Tell us about your mother, for whom this is now named.
You know what? She tolerated me for 50 years, so wanted to do something to honor her, and I just think this fits perfectly. So we're happy to be here, happy to do it.
And what are some of your favorite things to do here?
What's not my favorite thing to do here? Quite frankly, just spend time with the grandkids. You know, whatever they want to do, I'm happy to move along with them. It's an incredible facility. It really is, and I appreciate everyone before me that put this together.
Well, we're glad to have you here for sure. Mary, the museum has been here for 23 years. The airplane, one of the very first original exhibits here. How has it changed over the years?
We have grown and evolved as time has gone. We have always been a fabulous, safe, fun place for kids and families. But when we first started, we had the fire truck was in this room, and things have been moved around. Exhibits have changed just as kids have changed and grown, and some things have been loved to death and been replaced by other things. So we have just evolved. In 2010, we opened the Edible Schoolyard, and that was a fabulous
Recording in
new thing.
progress.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item Z 2304-003, a rezoning request from R3 residential whoops.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Trying to get to it. Sorry. Give me
I
just a second.
understand. A rezoning request from R5. We'll try again.
There we go.
A rezoning from BP Business Park to CDLI Conditional District Light Industrial for the properties identified as 8309 West Market Street, generally described as south of West Market Street, west of South Regional Road, and east of NC Highway 68, 151.40 acres. Mr. Kirkman?
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. Again, the request is to rezone from Business Park, BP, to CDLI Conditional District Light Industrial. North of the property is currently zoned a combination of HI, Heavy Industrial, R3, Residential Single Family, CM, Commercial Medium. East of the property is zoned HI and R3, as well as LI, Light Industrial. South of the subject property is zoned both HI, Heavy Industrial, and LI, Light Industrial. And west of the subject property is zoned BP, Business Park. The property is currently undeveloped at this time. North of the request is a combination of a railroad, undeveloped land, a bank, transit services, single-family dwellings, a fire station, concrete manufacturing, and a number of other industrial uses, as well as a trucking terminal. East of the request is a tractor-trailer storage, undeveloped land, professional services, vehicle repair, freight handling, and an asphalt paving contractor. South of the request are vehicle repair use, as well as tractor-truck storage, and vehicle leasing, as well as retail, warehouse, and a hotel. And west of the request is NC Highway 68. This image shows a portion of the subject property as seen from West Market Street. This image shows a portion of the subject property as seen from South Regional Road. And this shows the subject property as seen from NC Highway 68. Excuse me. This is a recycling and building materials use located north of the request, zoned HI. This is the fire station, also located north of the request, zoned R3. This is a single-family dwelling located north of the request, zoned R3. This is the bus terminal that's located north of the request, zoned CDLI. This is undeveloped land located north of the request, zone County RS30. This is a bank located north of the request, zoned CM. This image shows a tractor-trailer storage lot that's located east of the request, zoned HI. This is undeveloped land located east of the request, zoned LI. This is a multi-tenant office building located east of the request, also zoned LI. This is a contractor's office located east of the request, zoned LI. This is an auto repair use located southeast of the request, zoned HI. This is another auto repair use located north of the request, zoned HI. And another auto repair use located north of the request, zoned HI. This is a restaurant equipment sales center that's located south of the request, zoned LI. This is an office building located southwest of the request, zoned BP. And this is undeveloped land located west of the request, zoned BP. This view is facing east on West Market Street. The subject property here is located on your right. And this view is facing west on West Market Street. The subject property is located on your left. This is a view facing south on South Regional Road. The subject property here is on your right. And this is facing north on South Regional Road. The subject property here is on your left. This view is facing north on NC Highway 68. The subject property here is located on your right. And this is a view facing south on NC Highway 68. The subject property here is located on your left. This is the condition that was associated with the request and advertised as part of the hearing. The GSO 2040 comprehensive plan designates this property as planned industrial on the future built form map and as industrial on the future land use map. Staff has concluded this rezoning does support the comprehensive plan's growing economic competitiveness, big idea, to build a prosperous, resilient economy that creates equitable opportunities to succeed, and the growing economic competitiveness goal to increase and preserve the inventory of developable sites compatible with corporate and industrial uses. The proposed CDLI district allows a variety of warehouse, industrial, distribution, office uses, generally consistent with other surrounding uses on nearby properties. And staff notes a change in zoning will increase industrial development opportunities while still limiting any potential negative impacts on adjacent and nearby properties and uses. And staff is recommending approval of this request. I can answer any questions.
Any questions? If not, we have up to 10 minutes for the applicant. Anyone speaking in favor?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Board and Commission. Appreciate being here before you tonight. My name is Amanda Hodiern, 804 Green Valley Road, Suite 200 here in Greensboro. I'm here tonight on behalf of Hillwood Companies. It's a Perot company, and they have this property under contract for a long-term lease option from Norfolk Southern, who owns the property. Of course, we know the railroad does not sell property, but this is as close as it gets. So my client is excited to have this opportunity with this piece of property, and I'm excited to tell you about that tonight. This is the zoning map, which of course you've seen and are familiar with, but I like to zoom out and get a broader perspective so we can really kind of see what's going on here and what's driving this request. As you see, the airport is immediately to the northeast of the site. That's the large gray, all the runways that you see. Highway 68 runs immediately to the west of the site. It's running up and down through the middle of your screen, subject property being the red star here, of course. We are zoned BP, just over 150 acres, as you heard from Mr. Kirkman. But I want to look at here is the surrounding land use pattern. You see a lot of purple. We're in the middle of a big swath of industrial here that borders the interstate and runs along this corridor that is really a logistics and transportation corridor. BP can serve that need and has done so, but also it has some limitations, and that's really what this request is about tonight. We're seeking LI zoning to be able to pursue a warehousing, distribution, logistics facility here that can fully utilize to the highest and best use 150 acres. That has railroad access. You don't find a lot of parcels in Greensboro with railroad access, and you certainly don't find 150 acres of it. It also has easy access to Highway 68, to Interstate 40, and of course it's immediately proximate to the airport. So this is really just a uniquely suited site to be put to good logistics use, what we call soft industrial flex space now. We see a lot of purple here. Mr. Kirkman showed you a lot of photos of what's going on. Industrial, it's not a lot of smokestacks and metal buildings. This is employment. This is office space. This is manufacturing. This is warehousing. This is distribution. This is exactly what you would expect to see along this corridor in these parts of Greensboro, moving goods and moving people both north, south, and east-west. Just looking at the aerial, again, more zoomed out, and you see a lot of development, a lot of industry, soft industry, office, employment going on in this corridor, as we would expect from having seen the zoning. And what really jumps out at me here is this big open area right in the middle of it. Again, 150 acres, this well suited, and so we're excited to have the opportunity to put that to highest and best use and keep the economic development and the employment going here in Greensboro. We do have a proposed zoning condition just to further limit the uses. No cemeteries, no shooting ranges, no funeral homes, crematoriums, recycling processing centers, and no landfills, minor being the only one that's allowed in LI, so that's the only one we needed to exclude. I'll point out that your ordinance, Greensboro's underlying LDO, is actually doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, so we didn't have to have too many conditions. This site is, of course, within the scenic corridor overlay that runs along Highway 68, so that gives us a lot of aesthetic standards in terms of landscaping screening, building height, and signage along Highway 68 that protects our neighbors across the other side of the highway and also protects the traveling public along 68 so that they still get a nice visual experience. We're also within the airport overlay district. This is very important in terms of making sure that we have compatible uses that aren't going to interfere with the airport operations. As you can see in your staff report, that airport overlay is intended primarily to promote industrial uses and uses that support the airport. So this zoning certainly goes toward that goal and furthers those conflict resolutions and those planning policies. We did send out a letter to our neighbors. We sent out 42 letters. This just introduces the project, who my client is, how to get in touch with me as the project representative. If anyone had any questions, concerns, wanted to hear more about it. I did receive 2 phone calls, had nice conversations with neighboring property owners, including the Transit Authority. Piedmont Area Rapid Transit is the bus terminal that you saw just to our north. So they were excited to have a neighbor that they feel could be synergistic with what they've got going on as they seek to provide transit to employers in the area. Also heard via email and then spoke on the phone with a property owner across 68, Ms. Jones, who is on Zoom, who you'll hear from later. So appreciated the engagement of our neighbors who were interested, and I believe that Ms. Jones does have some, I think, what I would call site planning questions or concerns that you'll hear about, but I believe that I would call this a successful outreach to our neighborhood, that we didn't encounter major concerns or anything that caused pause or modification to our request, which I believe is in keeping with the area I submit to you, is an exact furtherance of the goals and policies that we have in place and of the economic development that we're seeing in Greensboro. Your staff report, of course, expands on those consistencies with our 2040 plan and also recommends approval. I have with me tonight, in case you have any questions, Mr. Alex Carr of Hillwood Companies, who's the principal project manager and VP of this project, and also have with me Austin Watts from Kimley Horn, who's been working on the design and civil and all the due diligence and investigation that it takes us to get to this point. We do have a TIA that was required, and that's been vetted and is tracking along with this, and of course will carry over into TRC to ensure the infrastructure safety and efficiency should this project get built. We also have a TRC sketch plan that we've vetted for our potential use. So we feel like everything's pointing in the right direction, that this is a viable project that will advance the goals and policies of the city. I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions? If not, we have 3 minutes and 23 seconds remaining if anyone else would like to speak in favor of the application. If not, we have up to 10 minutes for those who want to speak in opposition. And I believe we had Ms. Johnson online.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is Dina Johnson.
Excuse me. Could you turn your camera on and give your name and address, please?
All right. Dina Johnson, and my address is 141 Thatcher Road, Greensboro, is the property that I own. And I did receive the letter, and I did reach out to the attorney that is representing Hillwood. But it was also slightly confusing because the actual owner of the property is Norfolk Southern. So we had a report done by Pilot Environmental that shows there are 2 culverts that come onto our piece of property that come under 68 and come off that acreage, or that property that is owned, that Hillwood wants to rezone. So I asked the attorney for the survey from the Army Corps of Engineers, which I did not receive. And I also asked about if there was anything, she had any information about those culverts, and I got nothing. So I reached out to 3 different people at Norfolk Southern, trying to get an answer from them as to what's going on with those culverts. So my question, I wanted to specifically know what type of business will be put on that land, simply because those culverts come straight to me. And I was not given a definitive answer. I was told that it's being developed and there is no specific business that's going in. So I could not get an answer there. And I also was asking,
it would take Pilot Environmental or someone else to look into those culverts to see where, how, and why they're originating on that property. I did reach out to DOT, and I've got nothing back from DOT as far as if they put them in, what happened. So I would like the zoning, I would like it to not be rezoned at this time until I get the answers I have asked for.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none, we do have up to 5 minutes of rebuttal time for the applicant or those who are in favor. And if you would give your name and address again, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Hodiern, 804 Green Valley Road, Suite 200 here in Greensboro. And thank you, Ms. Jones, for being here, engaging with me, and asking me those questions ahead of time. I know that the culvert issue is more site plan.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. My name is Johnson.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Ms. Johnson.
Okay.
Thank you. I apologize, Ms. Johnson. So we did look into the culvert issue. I did just get an answer tonight from our engineer that he was able to trace those back. They actually drain a pond at the airport and just go through our property. They don't actually originate on this property. I know that's a site planning concern that we don't want to get too much in the weeds to tonight, but I'll be happy to link together Ms. Johnson and Mr. Watts, our engineer, and they can talk more about it as to what we know about it. In terms of her concerns that anything would be impacted from that and affected and then flow over onto her property. Of course, as we know through our TRC process and all of the stormwater regulations, we're certainly not allowed to change that and impact in any way that would increase or change the stormwater runoff onto her site. So from the fact that they're not even originating on this site, I'm not sure that our development would impact them at all. But if we do, we've got to stop them, catch them, treat them, and release at the same pre-development rate. So that's certainly something that will be looked at and handled and through the rigorous review of the TRC. And if we can't do that, then of course we don't get to get a site plan approval. She did mention, she wanted to know what business would be here, and that is something that we don't have tenants yet. As we know, zoning is not about tenants, it's about the land use. So right now we're here for permission to create this so that we can go try to get some tenants and get it leased up and let Mr. Carr do what he does to that end. But we do believe, for the reasons I expanded on earlier, that it is the highest and best use of the property. And for those reasons, we'll have no problem finding those tenants. So I'm happy to answer any further questions about those items.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Ms. Skeens?
So the investigation that has been done at this point is the culverts that Ms. Johnson's referring to. They did not originate on this piece of property.
That's correct.
Do they flow beside or near or?
I believe they flow under our property. I'll have to, if I say something wrong, come on up and talk. But yes, that's my understanding, that they drain a pond at the airport, flow under this property, under 68. And I've not seen Ms. Johnson's property, but apparently the culverts open on the other side of 68, adjacent to or on her property.
It sounds like they're piped.
I believe that is my understanding, yes.
If you could give your name and address, please.
Austin Watts, 200 South Tryon Street, Suite 200 in Charlotte. Yes, I did some due diligence. I looked at the contours. There is a pond on the airport property that flows underneath Market Street, flows onto our site. There are some jurisdictional streams on our site that we have delineated, and we've got a jurisdictional determination through the Army Corps of Engineers. And then the stream in question then exits our property, runs underneath 68 through those culverts onto the adjacent property to the southwest.
Any other questions?
But clarification that becomes a TRC issue, not a land use issue, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Skeens. Any other questions? If not, we have 2 minutes and 40 seconds remaining of rebuttal time for anyone in favor of the application. We also have 5 minutes of rebuttal time available for those in opposition to the application. Ms. Johnson, did you want to add anything? I'm sorry, you're muted. No, I'm sorry, we're not hearing.
Yeah, somebody else keeps muting me. I don't know what's happening. Just that specifically, I had asked for information about that property. I had reached out to multiple people to find out about those culverts, and today was when I get an answer. So I find that disturbing that last minute they have an answer, and she specifically said she believes. She didn't say she knew for sure.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to make a comment in opposition to the application? Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Are there any comments or questions? If not, we'll look for a motion, please.
I can do that. I'll simply say that in this instance, we typically allow the engineering of the site to be done by a process called TRC. Tonight, really all we're deciding on is the land use. Many times when land use comes before us, it could be very generic in a sense of whether they're going to build a warehouse or, in this case, what was a business park. So in that realm, I'm supportive. And in regards to agenda item Z-23-04-003, the Greensboro Planning and Zoning Commission believes its action to recommend approval of the rezoning request for the property at 8309 West Market Street from Business Park to Conditional District Light Industrial to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable in the public interest for the following reasons. 1, the request is consistent with the Comprehensive Plan's future built form map and future land use map. 2, the proposed CD-LI zoning district as condition permits uses would fit the context of the surrounding area and limits negative impacts on the adjacent properties. 3, the request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Engel and Ms. Skeens. Any other comments? I've been reminded, for the sake of those recording the meeting, it is easier. I was so excited we were all here in the same evening. It's easier for those recording the meeting if we would vote by hand rather than voice. So all those in favor of approving the motion, please raise your hand. Anyone opposed? That motion carries. This approval constitutes final action unless an appeal is submitted in writing to the Planning Department and the appeal fee paid within 10 days. Anyone may file such an appeal. All such appeals will be subject to a public hearing at the Tuesday, May 16, 2023 City Council meeting. All adjoining property owners will be notified of any such appeal. I think this concludes all of our public hearings for the evening. We will delay a report on the Eastgate City presentation because we're still in a public comment period, so it is too soon for us to have a final report. Do we have any other items from the Planning and Zoning?
We do not have any other items for the commission this evening.
Do I have anything from commission members? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you. Thank
Second.
you all very much.